welcome and welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay, and here at Cafe Oleh with Nefesh B'Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need in Israel to succeed, whether that is reading and paying your bills, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, going on a job interview, going on a date, complaining, all the everyday things you do in your native language in your countries of origin, but here in Israel in modern Hebrew. As always, we want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. Please be in touch with us by email at any time at Hebrew, that's Hebrew, at nbn.org.il. If you're joining us live on Zoom, you can also write to us in the chat here on Zoom. Otherwise, email us at any time. You can also see all of our previous lessons up on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, type in Cafe Oleh. You'll see an entire playlist with all of our previous lessons, along with the corresponding vocabulary spreadsheet. Those of you who have signed up through Zoom, you will get a recording of that video along with the spreadsheet in your email in the days after each class. Otherwise, you can always find it a few days after the class itself up on YouTube, so you can review the class as you would like. As always, I have to give this provision, not always, but in the last month, if you are here in Israel and the siren goes off of an incoming missile or rocket attack, your safety is more important than learning Hebrew. Please go seek adequate shelter based on the amount of time you have in Israel. Just like if it goes off here in Tel Aviv while we're on together, I will be doing that, but I will come right back when it's safe to resume. So if I step out or you need to step out, don't worry. The class will be here. It'll be up on YouTube in the next few days. You won't miss a thing. Your safety, my safety comes before any of this. Today, we're going to do a class I actually planned to teach you all a month ago, exactly a month ago. We talked a lot right before the fall holidays, the holiday season, as I call it, the Jewish holiday season, of this notion of Acharei Chagim, right? That as much as we have all these holidays with very specific times and stuff, we have this ambiguous time called Acharei Chagim, and it literally means after the holidays. And it's a phrase in Israeli society that we use like, let's do lunch in American society. It's saying, oh yeah, let's talk Acharei Chagim. Let's meet Acharei Chagim. But that's such an ambiguous term. It's the one time in Israeli culture that people are very ambiguous about when actually they want to meet. If you say, yeah, let's meet after the holidays, is that the day after? Is it the week after? Is it the month later? Because people are so overwhelmed by getting back to normal. And I think this class is even more important than ever, this notion of finding some sense of normalcy. We've been told by the government, by the military, by ourselves, that we're in a state of what we call shigrat cherum. Shigra, we're going to talk about in a little bit. Routine is what it means, and cherum is emergency. How do you weigh both a routine in a time of emergency, in a time of war? And what we're going to do today is talk about the terms we use, and we're going to go through the terms we use in Israeli society to understand how we frame time and how we frame ourselves, how we get organized, because a big part of Acharei Chagim is getting ourselves organized to get back to normal. We're going to talk about that term back to normal, how we say that in Hebrew, and all sorts of things that are going to help us, I hope. I definitely know I need this. Having a hard time getting to some sense of normalcy. I think a lot of you are in the same case too. That's what we're going to discuss today. How do we do that in the framework of modern Hebrew and Israeli society? So as always, I'm going to share my screen. You're welcome to cut and copy, screenshot, old school pen and paper, or just wait till the download recording. If you have questions about this specific class, please write in the Q&A. Anything else that does not have to do with this specific class, or if we don't have time for questions at the end, please write it in the chat. The chat I will always review the next day. The Q&A is just for this class. So if there's anything that's unclear as I'm teaching, please write in the Q&A, or any questions you'd like me in the whatever remaining time we have to go over as well. Okay. So let me open my screen. View. Full screen. Okay, So let's get started. All right. So first off, when we're talking about getting in shape, getting to some sense of order, you're going to find a lot of the words we're going to use are in this light blue, and they all have the same shoresh, right? We talk about this every week because it's just that important that every Hebrew word is comprised of two things: a shoresh and a mishkal, or binyan if it's a verb. The shoresh is usually three letters, sometimes two, sometimes four, but it's usually three, and that has its own meaning. We then put it into a mishkal, a format, or binyan, a building system that gives it its sound, its vowels, its helper letters, begin or after, in the middle, that give it its specific name. In this case, we're going to start off with a shoresh that probably a lot of you will recognize, and you'll recognize some of these words, and they all have to do with order. Samech Daled Resh. Samech Daled Resh. Anytime you see this shoresh in word, this root, you'll understand it has something to do with order and organizing. And let's look at some great examples of how this word gets used. Again, in hoping we find some sense of order in all the chaos we're dealing with. So first off, the word lisader. Lisader is a verb. It means to organize. Very simply put, אני מסדר את הבית. I organize the house, or I tidy up the house is another way we can say it. It doesn't mean to clean. It means to put things away, to put things where they're supposed to be, to organize. Okay. Seder. Seder is one of many words we're going to have here. Seder simply means order. Okay. Something, order of anything is seder. Seder adifuyot is priority, means priority. Seder, as we said, is order, and adifuyot is comes from the root that gives us the word adif, prefer or preferable. Leha adif, to prefer something. So seder adifuyot is literally a list of priorities, right? But adifut is a priority, but seder adifuyot is, we can think of literally as a list of priorities, but it can also just be understood as priority. What are our priorities? Actually, I want to pluralize this because it really is among many different options. What is our ranking of them? What is most important to us? Seder adifuyot, priorities. Okay, מה סדר העדיפויות שלי בשגרת החירום הזאת? What are my priorities in this time of routine emergency? Right? Is it my health, הבריאות שלי? Is it my work, העבודה שלי? Is it my volunteering, ההתנדבות שלי? Is it my family, המשפחה שלי? סדר עדיפויות, priorities. We all have our own priorities any time of the year. Using that same word seder, we get the word biseder. Biseder or biseder, depending on how you say the letter resh, or in Hebrews, in Israeli slang, it's going to sound like they're making fun of the American accent, and they are a little, but it's totally all right, is to say beseder. Beseder. Own your American accent, own our accents. We're all immigrants at some point here, coming back to our home. But beseder is just as fine as beseder or beseder, however you want to say the letter resh. And it literally means in order, but we translate it to as okay. Okay. Ma nishma, ani beseder. How are you? I'm okay. Okay, that's simply what it means. In order, but we translate it, we understand it to mean okay. Keep going with that word. We know it from several months ago. Leil Seder or Leil HaSeder. I'm actually going to put that here in parentheses. Leil Seder or Leil HaSeder is the Seder table, is the Seder night, right, of Pesach, excuse me, of Passover. Okay, Leil HaSeder is how we say it in Hebrew. The Seder night, the night that we have our Seder for Pesach, Passover. That same root, samech daled resh, also gives us the word sidur. Sidur is not just a prayer book, and I put that in here as well. I'll make sure that you see that. There it is. It is what we call a prayer book in Jewish tradition, Siddur, because it organizes the prayers for us. Siddur is also the verbal noun. It's the gerund of listadir. So it also means arranging or arrangement. Okay. הסידור של הבית, עוד לא הגעתי לסידור של הבית. I haven't yet, עוד לא הספקתי. I haven't yet had time to arrange the house is one way to say it, right? Using the verbal noun, just like the ing in English, okay? And it's plural, and this is an important distinction between the singular sidul, which means arranging, arrangements, and prayer book, or sidurim. Sidurim is the word that we use in modern Hebrew for errands. Whether it's one errand or multiple errands, it's the same word. The plural of it, sidurim. Okay? Yatzati lesidurim. I went out to do errands, to run errands. Right? I went to run errands, or I ran errands. Yatzati sidurim, yatzati lesidurim. Sidurim is simply errands. Okay? Organizing, literally, but that's or arrangements. But we use it to mean errands in modern Hebrew. Using that same root again is the adjective mesudar. Mesudar, male, mesuderet, female, mesudarim, plural, male or mixed gender, mesudarot, plural, feminine. Mesudar simply means organized, right? If something is organized, something is arranged, it's mesudar. Organized or arranged. Let me put that here. Organized, come on. There we go. Okay. In slang, it means someone who's financially set, right? There was a popular TV show, wow, that must have been 10 or so years ago in Israel, obviously in Hebrew, called Mesudarim, the financially set guys. And the plot of the story was a group of friends who made an exit. They sold their high-tech company and they lived the rest of their life on the profits of that in this big shared house. And it was the story of them dealing with it. It was, you can think of it like Entourage, but instead it was the whole group that made a exit from their startup and lived off the profits on it, and also deciding whether they want to start a new business or not. But it was called Hamisudarim, the financially set guys or people. Okay, so if someone is misudar, they can be organized, they can be arranged in that they're set up for something good, but it also means set up financially, meaning they got money. They don't need to worry about money. Misudar is very much slang, but you'll hear it quite often. Okay. Lahasdir. Lahasdir is our same root again, now in what we call the causative form of a verb, which means to regulate or to settle affairs. Okay, so if I want to regulate something, I want to give order. I want to make order out of something to regulate. From this same word, we get a lot of other words here. And I actually forgot an important one here I'm going to add in a second. From the same word, we get the word hesder. Hesder is used in a lot of different ways in modern Hebrew. One of them is hesder tiyun. Hesder tiyun is a plea bargain. Okay, so for those of you who keep up with legal affairs, judicial affairs, you'll know this is an important term. Hesder tiyun is a plea bargain. Okay, it's a settling of an argument. Yeshivat Hesder. Probably many of you have heard of this before, if not having relatives who have served in a Yeshivat Hesder. Yeshivat Hesder is a specific type of military service where you spend part of your military service in active duty and part learning in a yeshiva. This is typically done in the Dati Leumi community, the national religious community. It's a very popular option, spending time learning and serving in the military together. But the idea is that you are regulating your time in between study and service. Okay. Another word I forgot here. I can't believe I forgot this one. It's a very important one in Hebrew and in Israel is sidra. Sidra. You probably all have been watching at least one sidra at some point. If you've been able to concentrate, certainly in the rest of the year, you watch a sidra. A sidra is a TV series, right? Sidra is a TV series, something that you watch regularly, something that is shown regularly, that it has chapters to it. In Hebrew, we call them chapters. An episode is called a chapter. A perek is also an episode, but a sidra is the entire series of a show, whether it's the season or the entirety of the show throughout the years. This is the word we use, sidra, from the same root, samech dalid resh. Okay, another word we've talked about a lot in this class because it's a really important word. I use it at least once, twice a day, is mistader. Mistader for male, mistaderet for female. Usually you're using it in the singular sense for myself. Or you're asking someone if they are mistader or mistaderet, meaning, are you all good? Are you all set? This is what you'll say, for example, if you're in a store and someone asks, do you need help? Tzarich or tzricha ezra, depending on your gender. And you can answer, if you're all good, you don't need any help, ani mistader, or ani mistaderet, or simply say mistader or mistaderet, I'm good, I'm all set. Okay, that's what this word means. We use it all the time. And then finally, we've talked about this one also before, is the Histadrut. The Histadrut is Israel's labor trade federation. It's the large, since played a very important role since even before the state of Israel existed. It is, exactly as it says, a federation of labor unions. It still has a lot of power in Israel. It's anywhere from 800 to 900,000 people are represented by the Histadrut. And again, using that same root, samech daled resh, this was obviously a new word that was created at the turn of the 20th century to describe this conglomeration of various labor unions that formed together a federation, right? To create order out of all the different unions. You can think of why this word has the same root as order and errands and plea bargain and all these other things, creating some order. Okay, and that's what we're talking about, whether it's acharei chagim, after the holidays, trying to create some order out of our, hectic holiday season that usually meant no work was getting done, or nowadays in our shigrat cherum, in our routine emergency state of how do we create some order for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our workplaces, and so forth. Okay, let's go through some more words related to these. So this word we've talked about before in the context of Corona. Remember way back when we first came online here with Cafe Oleh, and it was because of the pandemic, the Magefa. And we talked about, as we came out of each lockdown or out of each wave of the pandemic, we talked about chazlash. And chazlash, we also talk about in the context of acharei chagim. Chazlash is an abbreviation. As you see here, those two apostrophes between the second to last and last letters always indicate an abbreviation or an acronym in Hebrew. And as opposed to English, we create words out of abbreviations and acronyms. It's like French and Spanish in that way, not like in English where we either spell out an abbreviation or we sort of use parts. Some of it we do and some of it we don't. In this case, chazlash. Chazlash stands for chazara leshigra. Chazara is from the verb lachzor, to return. So chazara is a return, the act of returning, and shigra, as I mentioned before at the beginning of this class, means routine. Excuse me. But in this case, when we say chazlash, it can mean going back to a routine, but it's going back to a sense of normalcy. Return to quote unquote normal or normalcy. Okay. Because nothing is normal, but it's what our normal routine is, or return to, let's put it this way, return to normal routine. Okay, that's the best way to think about this, because the word shiga literally means a routine. Okay, chazlash, chazara l'shiga, we talk about this a lot. One of the things, I think I taught you this way back for the holiday season, is when you see someone right after the holiday season, is to wish them a chazlash na'im, right? To have a pleasant return to a normal routine, because it's not easy. We know this right now. We know this during the holiday season. It's not easy to get back to a regular routine. Okay. Related to the word shigra is the word hergel or hergel. It's a hard word to say in any, no matter how you say the letter resh, and it means habit. The other week, you'll remember we translated and listened together to one of the really popular songs that's been written and now performed everywhere in the result of the last month. And they talk and how popular it is. There's another really popular song I alluded to, and they talk about in that song, one of the lyrics is Helgelim Yeshanim. It's a song about how do we get out of depression. It was actually written before October 7th, but it's talking about all these ways that we can get out of depression. And one of them is how do we get back to our Helgelim Hayeshanim, our old habits, whether they were good or not good. Okay, so a Helgel is a habit, something that we normally do that helps us figure out our time and helps us organize ourselves. Okay. Another word that has these apostrophes, and it's an important word you'll hear all the time, is a luz. Luz stands for luach zmanim, and it's simply a schedule. Okay. Luach is a board, right? Is a board, and zmanim are the times. So luz can be a schedule, right? When you open up Google Calendar, that's a lose. If you jot down what you need to do for the day, that's a lose. If you go to a conference, right, here in Israel, and they have the times of all the different speakers and things, that is a lose. Anything like that, a schedule, a board, a board of times, literally. It is a lose. Routine, we just talked about shigra, but it's here, so you have that word again. I'm actually going to move that up a little bit higher so you have that. This is a great term. So modern Hebrew has a lot of different sources for words of new concepts that need to be created at the turn of the 20th century to modernize Hebrew. And one of the sources we get for a lot of our words and expressions in modern Hebrew comes from the army. And this is a very army expression that we also have, that we use all the time, and you'll hear it all the time here, is la'amod bizmanim. La'amod bizmanim means to be on time. It literally translates to stand in the times. When you use the verb la'amod, it doesn't just mean to stand. We use the verb la'amod in a lot of different ways. When you're getting ready to do something, when I'm preparing to do something, when I'm getting fit to do something, that's also the meaning of la'amod. This is an army term that has become very commonly heard. It doesn't translate necessarily directly. It's an idiomatic expression, but also understanding we use the verb la'amod in a lot of other ways. I'm getting ready to do something, right? אני עומד לבשל בעוד שעה. בעוד שעה אני עומד לבשל. Or אני עומד לבשל אחרי השיעור הזה. That's a better way to use this, right? אני עומד לבשל אחרי השיעור הזה. I'm getting ready, or I'm standing, literally standing, but I'm getting ready, meaning preparing myself, just like when we stand up, we get ourselves prepared, to cook, לבשל, אחרי השיעור הזה, after this class. Okay, la'amod in that context means to get ready to do something, but in this context, it means la'amod bizmanim, to be on time, literally to stand in the times. But la'amod bizmanim, to be on time. And you can translate, by the way, la'amod is a verb, right? So that gets conjugated. If you are late for work, but not in a good way, and you are told off by your boss or your superior or your supervisor, they may say to you, "Ani mitzapeh shete'amod," or te'amdi, depending on your gender, "Ani mitzapeh shete'amod bizmanim." I expect you to be on time, using the future tense conjugation of the verb la'amod after "Ani mitzapeh." I expect you to be on time in the future. Okay? Speaking of being on time, some other important words about keeping time. Mukdam. Mukdam, we've talked about this word before. It's an adjective. It means early. Mukdam, male. Mukdemet, female. Mukdamim, mukdamot. Okay? That can be early in the sense of yourself being early, someone else being early, something arriving early, any of those things. And the opposite of early, of mukdam, is just like in English, late. In Hebrew, me'uchar. Me'uchar, me'ucheret, me'ucharim, me'ucharot. Okay? So two important adjectives when we're talking about being organized with regards to time and space, mukdam, me'uchar. A great verb, le'akev and lehitakev. And I put this here in our space of getting prepared because this is a great verb to use when you are running late, right? Instead of replying after the fact that I'm late and saying ani me'uchar, and you can say that as well, you can say ani mitakev. I am delayed, right? I am running late, meaning literally I am delayed. I got stuck in traffic, whether it's real or not, right? Hitakavti bapkakim, right? That's how we use this verb. Le'akev is to delay someone or something, and lehit akev is to be delayed, right? Usually yourself. Remember, and I'm actually going to put this here farther down. That reminds me to put a word in here. Just one second. Good, we'll come back to that. Okay. Le'akev or lehitakev, to delay or to become delayed. A very important word you're going to hear all the time. The verbal noun of it is ikuv. Slicha ala ikuv. I'll write that in here. It's a good expression to have. Slicha al ikuv. Sorry for the delay. I'm sure we all need to use this expression at least once a day, if not a couple times a day. Slicha. Slicha al ha'ikuv. Okay, sorry for the delay. Okay, ikuv is a delay, coming as the verbal noun, the act of something, the act of delaying something. Okay, an important one in Israel for sure is ichur ofnati. You've probably heard the joke of Israel Standard Time, and we'll get to Standard Time in a second. But Israeli Standard Time is anything from 15 to 30 minutes late, usually not for office affairs, but more for social affairs. Ichur ofnati is also, as we say in English, fashionably late. It's not always the same thing, but it's a similar idea of you show up fashionably late, not on time to something. That's often the case in Israel. You don't show up when something begins, you show up beichur ofnati, fashionably late. Okay, speaking of Israeli Standard Time, many of you missed last week's class because of something very important, as we call in Israel, Sha'on Choref versus Sha'on Kaitz. Sha'on Choref is what we would call standard time. Okay, Sha'on means time in the sense of a clock or a watch, right? We use the word Sha'on for a clock or a watch, but when we're using it here, it's meaning time. And Choref means winter. So when we say winter time, in the context of Sha'on Choref, it means the specific time we're keeping in the winter, and that corresponds to what we call standard time. Okay, versus Sha'on Kaitz. Sha'on Kaitz is what we call daylight saving time, right? Daylight saving time is that period between the spring and the fall where we turn our clocks 1 hour forward, right? Spring forward, fall back. I always have to use that as well. Same thing. Okay. So in Israel, thankfully, after many, many, many years where there was no standardization of this, that even though we kept changing our clocks, it was never at a specific time. It would always change each year based on basically who the government was. For the last, I forget how many years now, it's been standardized to be the same week, the same weekend that the European Union changes their clocks. Why? Because that's one of our biggest trading partners. There would be years where there would be up to a month, 2 months, where we'd be off our normal time difference between Europe and even North America, especially North America. Now we're usually only a week or 2 weeks different from North America, and we keep the same time as the European Union and vice versa. So it's much easier. But Sha'on Choref is what we are in now, standard time. Okay, some other words about organizing our time. Yoman. We talked about a luz before, a schedule. Oftentimes you'll have a luz written in your yoman. From the word yom, day, we get a diary, right? Even the word diary has in it that D-I-A at the beginning of it is from the Latin root for the word day. Diary is the account of the day. Yoman in Hebrew, same thing. Okay, two great verbs that you're going to hear a lot. I love these verbs, and you'll understand in a second when you listen to these verbs very carefully, and that's the clue why these verbs are great. Lisankren or lisankren, sometimes it's pronounced with or without the dagesh in the kaf. And le'argen, you've probably heard at least one of these verbs regularly. Lisankren means to synchronize. Okay, so if you need to synchronize your watches between people or with a standard time or whatever it may be, standardized time, whatever it is lisankren. But that could also be synchronizing messages, synchronizing our label or our branding or our approach to something. We use the verb lisankren. And a verb that you probably heard even more often is le'argen. Le'argen or le'argen is to organize. That can be both something, that can be an organization of people, that can be all sorts of things. Why do I lump these two verbs together? Not just because they have to do with time and keeping time and organizing ourselves. They're both from English. One of these is obvious, I think. Lisankren is obviously to synchronize. Synchronize, lisankren, right? We have this a lot in Hebrew where we take a foreign word and we plug it into a mishkal or a binyan that everyone recognizes in Hebrew. This is how we get the words lifaxes, to fax, lifaspek, to like or follow someone on Facebook, lisames, to SMS someone, the obviously more recent one, le WhatsApp, to WhatsApp someone. We take a foreign word, we plug it into a standardized form that we create words in. Like I said, binyan for verbs, mishkal for nouns and adjectives, and we get a new word, lisankren. But this one, I thought, and most people think, is Hebrew. It is not Hebrew. Le'argen is to organize. Organize. Le'argen. It's just taking the word organize and plugging it into this specific binyan. Le'argen. So even though we use this verb all the time, even though we have a paramilitary organization before the founding of the state of Israel named the Irgun, literally the organization. Le'argen is an English word in origin that has become Hebraicized, to organize. That says a lot about these words, and it also says a lot about, even though we have all these other expressions of keeping time, things that we use in everyday language in English didn't exist in Hebrew up until several decades ago. Lisankren, to synchronize, and le'argen, to organize. There are other ways to say both of those concepts in Hebrew, to be sure, but now we have specific verbs in Hebrew corresponding to specific verbs in English. I put the word sha'aftan here, an ambitious person, because I think that's important when we're talking about being organized as someone who's taking advantage of time in a good way. This can be both a positive and a negative thing. If you call someone ambitious in Israel, that's not always a good thing. We can talk about that more in a future class. This is the one I wanted to get back to. When we're talking about being on time and organizing ourselves and saying if we are delayed or late to something is the classic. And we've talked about this before in terms of travel and distance, but this is always important. I'm on the way. Ni, sorry. Ni baderech. Baderech or ani baderech, you can say either, means I'm on the way, right? If someone says, where are you? You can answer ani baderech. If you are keeping someone else updated, you can simply write to them baderech. This is a great use of what we talked about before of Israeli Standard Time, because baderech means anything from I am on my way, I'm almost by your door, I'm somewhere in the middle of my trip, I have just left the house, or I have not even left the house, but I'm just about ready to go. Baderech is a wonderful, ambiguous term that makes it clear I'm somewhere along the way. I haven't forgotten about you. I'm on the way to you or to wherever we're meeting, but I may not actually be on the way yet, let alone anywhere nearby. You can simply say baderech or ani baderech, I'm on the way. But this is a great way, instead of saying before, like I'm running late, you can say 5 minutes before a meeting. Don't do this for a really important meeting, by the way, but do this for a friend. For example, if you meet a friend and you're 5 minutes away, you're supposed to meet in 5 minutes, but you're actually 15 minutes away, you can say ani baderech or simply baderech, right? And you get a little bit more lax of time, a little bit more freedom of movement in that respect. Okay. The next few words are going to be opposites. Not that we haven't talked about early and late and things like that, but these are words about, if we're talking about order, and that's what we're trying to find for ourselves and for each other in all of this mess, in this war, is order. The next few words are the opposite of order. The next few words are all about chaos, about all the things that mess up our time or that we use to describe when our time is not ordered. You'll know some of these words, by the way, already. I think you already all know the first word, balagan. Balagan is chaos. It's sometimes translated as organized mess or a mess or nonsense or all sorts of things, but it is chaos. Balagan is not Hebrew. Balagan comes to us. It's a really interesting origin of words. I don't have to go into it too much, but really quick. It comes from Russian and originally from Persian, and it comes from the same word, by the way. You can actually hear it in it because Persian is an Indo-European language like English. Balagan comes from the Persian word for balcony. Balcony, balagan. You can hear it's distantly related. And the idea was, on a balcony, you would put on performances that would usually be satirical or over the top. And so this notion of trying to contain this over the topness in a small balcony is where we get the term balagan. Okay, balagan is a noun. An adjective that something is chaotic or is messed up or is confused is mivulgan. Mivulgan, mivulgenet, mivulganim, mivulganot. Right? This word, because it's an adjective, does conjugate. Something is mivulgan, right? Is something that's chaotic or messed up. And the balaganist is someone who is or creates chaos. That ist at the end is like in English, where words that have to do with someone's profession end with ist. A receptionist, right? It's the same idea. When we add ist in modern Hebrew, it's obviously a adopted from English and other languages, but balaganist is someone who is or creates chaos. You can describe someone as this. All sorts of different people term that. By the way, another expression we use with balagan is yalla balagan. Yalla balagan is a positive thing. It means like it's party time. Like let's have fun. Yalla, let's go. Let's go make a mess or go have chaos. That's the idea of when we say yalla balagan. But balagan by itself means chaos. Okay. Some other words that have to do with trying to arrange things or sort of lack of time is a great one. Dakatishim. I am someone who swears by working until the last minute. That is how I'm sure a lot of you work, or you aren't thinking about things. And so in Israel, in modern Hebrew, instead of saying the last minute, you can say ad hadaka ha'achona, until the last minute, but the um, expression we use most often, you'll hear most often, is dakatishim. Dakatishim is not going to make sense, folks, if you are a true red-blooded American. Why? Because dakatishim comes from football, aka soccer. Okay, remember, a soccer match, a football match is 90 minutes, and so the last minute is, the build-up to see if you to see how much more you can um, uh, score. So Dakatishim is the last minute. There's a very popular travel website called Dakatishim in Israel that allows you to get last minute flights, right? Last minute opportunities to fly or to book a holiday purchase, meaning it's about to the flight is about to take off in like the next day or so. Oftentimes last minute flights are cheaper. So Dakatishim is a very popular website. It's daka90.co.il. Using this term Dakatishim, which you'll hear all the time in Israel. Also in terms of time, I have to use these two words. The last word in particular is one of my favorites. Atzlan is a lazy person. It can be referred to also creature and animal. We often use it for people. Atzlan, atzlanit, atzlanim, atzlaniot. Right? But atzlan is a male lazy person or animal. Atzlanit, atzlanim, atzlaniot are the conjugations of it. And then finally, we have an adverb. When I learned this word, I remember it still sticks in my head learning it many, many years ago. A Hebrew teacher said, this translates to with deliberate slowness. And I liked how she described it with deliberate slowness. It's not just lazily, right? Be'atzal time, such a great word. Be'atzal time doesn't just mean lazily, meaning they did something lazily. It means with deliberate slowness, they on purpose did something slow. Whether they themselves are atzlan, they are a lazy person, or they're trying to sabotage something, or they could care less about something, and so they aren't pressed for time to get something done. They aren't organized to do it, but maybe they're purposely making sure that something doesn't get done. Be'atzal time, a great adverb. You can use this for bureaucracy. We all have our share of that here in Israel, right? For bureaucracy or for anything else that has to do with deliberate slowness in that respect. Okay, I see we have a bunch of questions and we're getting to the top of the hour, so I'd like to get to these. Okay, so let's start looking at some of your questions here. I'm going to start with the ones about this class, and if you have any time, I'll earmark the ones that we have time to about other topics. What about to prioritize? How do you say to prioritize? You could say, one way to say that here is lשים adifut. To prioritize, there are a couple different ways you can say that in Hebrew, but to prioritize, did I spell that right? To prioritize, I think I did. Lשים adifut, to put preference on something, right? Is how we would literally translate that, to prioritize. Leha adif is simply to prefer. It's not to prioritize. So we need another verb to explain what we mean by priority. So lשים adifut, to put a priority on something, to prioritize. Is there a reflexive form of lisadil, meaning to get yourself organized or to get yourself sorted out? Yes, there is. It's this verb here. We don't usually say lehistadil, right? The infinite form infinitive of mistader. We usually only say mistader or mistaderet in everyday modern Hebrew, but yes, this is a verb, and it is the infinitive would be lehistader. So yes, it's the reflexive form of listader. Is sidurim also the plural for more than one sidur? Yes. When you in English, you can run an errand, um, or you can run errands. In Hebrew, we'll always use the plural, sidurim. Ani yotze sidurim. You're not going to say ani yotze sidur. That doesn't make sense in Hebrew if you're trying to say I'm going out to run errands or I'm running errands. Ani yotze sidurim. Whether it's one or multiple, we're keeping that ambiguous for your audience. Is this related to Hesder Yeshiva? I'm sorry I laugh, but yes, it's the same exact thing, folks. Yeshivat Hesder is how we say in modern Hebrew, Hesder Yeshiva. Remember, in Hebrew, when we make compound words, right, we're flipping the order. Just like in English, we have certain ways that we say a schoolhouse, right? Beit Sefer. In Hebrew, it's the other way, the house of the book. The yeshiva of the Hesder. Yeshivat Hesder is a Hesder yeshiva. Hesder yeshiva is anglicizing Yeshivat Hesder. And even some of you have written to me, is this related to Hesder yeshivas? You even answered your question there. You have turned a Hebrew expression into English by putting the S at the end of yeshivas instead of Hesder yeshivot, if Yeshivat Hesder. And if I want to pluralize it, it would be Yeshivot Hesder. Okay? So it's the exact same thing. This is how we say it, though, in modern Hebrew. Yeshivat Hesder is one of those types of yeshivot. How does Hestel Panim fit in here? Hestel Panim is not a term we normally use in modern Hebrew. That's a very poetic term. That's a very religious term. That is also Hestel. That's a taf. Lahastil is to hide. Hesdel is with a dalet, two different words. Is perek often used a chapter in the Torah? Yes, it is, folks, but we are also talking about modern Hebrew. Perek is a chapter in a book, and it's a chapter, it's an episode of a sidra. Okay, as much as it is, yes, a perek is also a chapter in the Torah and in the Tanakh in general. How would you use chazlash in a sentence? Ech overet chazlash. How goes your return to normalcy, to a normal routine? Or like I said, wishing someone a chazlash na'im, wishing someone a pleasant return to a normal routine. But you'll hear this term a lot when we talk about, for example, now with so many, up to 200,000 people displaced in Israel because of the war, internally displaced, saying like, "Ma'yeh chazash shalem." What will their normal routine or return to normal routine look like for these people? Okay. Is lose the same as a task list? That's a great question. It is not. Matalot is the word that we use for tasks. And I'll write that here. Matalot are tasks. Matalot. Lose is a schedule. It's not necessarily, a lose could include matalot, but matalot don't necessarily include a lose, right? We can have a list of tasks, but they aren't necessarily organized by time and when we're doing it. A lose specifically is a schedule that's affixed to a timeline. Right? Why is there a dot in the Nun of Zmanim? I've said this before, I'm always happy to reply to this. We don't go into the details of Nikud, the dots and the bars that indicate vowel sounds and all sorts of other things in addition to vowels. It is, number one, very complicated. I only add the Nikud in this because most of our participants are of a beginner's level, and I'm making it easy for you to read. But if I was writing this out, that dagesh in the middle of the nun would not be there. So I'm not going to even get into it. It's far too complicated and not as relevant in modern Hebrew. How would you say you need to be on time? צריך לעמוד בזמנים. Exactly right as this person wrote in their question to me. Yes, you need to stand in the times. אתה צריך לעמוד בזמנים. Saying to a male, to a female, את צריכה לעמוד בזמנים. You need to stand in the times. You need to be on time. How is embassy, shagrirut, related to routine? We talked about this the other week when we talked about shigul, and lishagil is to send, right? There is a connection. It's not hitting me right at the moment, but there is a connection of these words together. Happy to go over that another time. But they do have the same root of shin, shin gimel resh, as you see here. Is lehit akev from the same verb for to heal, for heal? No. And again, folks, thank you for asking this question. This again illustrates something I talk about all the time. Spelling in Hebrew, folks, is destiny. You cannot switch the letters for lehit akev with the root that makes up the verb lehit akev. Okay, in modern Hebrew, lehit akev, to become delayed, also has the same sound as lehit akev, to become followed or to be followed, but they are not the same root. Lehit akev is ein kaf bet. Lehit akev, as in to follow or to become followed, is ein kuf bet. Just because the sounds in modern Hebrew are similar does not mean you can switch between them. Very important when you learn shorashim and you learn words, you recognize their root and the general meaning, because these two words do not mean the same thing and do not have the same shoresh. Great question. How do I postpone an appointment or reschedule? Great question. How do I postpone? We'll put it here. To postpone. To postpone is lidchot in modern Hebrew. And to cancel is levatel, to cancel. Okay. I'll put in the transliteration in the nikud later, but lidchot is to postpone, levatel is to cancel. So ani tzarich lidchot tor. I need to postpone an appointment. Or ani tzarich levatel tor. I need to cancel an appointment. I am fashionably late. Would I say ani beichur ofnati? Yep, you can say hi ani beichur ofnati. You actually don't say that, right? If someone is fashionably late, you don't say I'm fashionably late unless you're being, chastised for being late. I'm not late, I'm fashionably late. That's the only way you would say that yourself. Someone else would call you being fashionably late. Is Yoman also used for a writing journal? The difference between a diary and a writing journal is up to you. I think of those things as being the same thing. That's up to you, but yes, it's the same thing. Journal or diary. What is the difference between le'argen and listader? Great question. There isn't much of a difference between listader and le'argen. They both mean to organize, right? Listader is to organize, le'argen is also to organize. The best way I can explain it is listader is usually has to do with objects, and le'argen usually has to do with people or more both people, but also more abstract concepts. אני צריך לארגן את המידע במחקר הזה. I need to organize the information in this research. You wouldn't necessarily use listader because listader also means to order something. Not to order over the phone, but to order as in various different things to put them in order. So that's a more tangible thing versus le'argen is more to organize people or abstract concepts. That's how you're normally using it. Is fauda used colloquially for chaos, even though it is an Arabic word? I know many of you are fans of the TV show Fauda, and in Arabic slang, particularly the dialect that's spoken here in this part of the Levant, Fauda means chaos. We don't use it very often. You're not going to hear someone say, "Is Fauda?" It doesn't work like that. First off, it didn't catch on like that. Also, you have to keep in mind that series is very traumatic for a lot of people to watch. I myself have never watched it. Having been in Israel through many military operations and wars and the Second Intifada, I don't need to relive it. And I know a lot of Israelis who also have a hard time watching that show. It's a very hard show to watch when you also live here. So it's one of the reasons why Fauda has not caught on as an everyday slang word. You will hear it used every once in a while, but it's not used nearly as much as balagan. Um, is there an equivalent to ETA, estimated time of arrival? Yes, but we don't use it in the exact same way. How would you say this? You would say something like below. There's a couple different ways. Ha me shu al ha me shu eret. Estimated time of arrival. Execution. TC. We don't have the exact expression ETA, estimated time of arrival, but we do have the two words hazman hameshu'al or hasha'a hameshu'eret. The simple difference is zman literally means time, sha'a literally means hour. They are both used interchangeably for hour, as you've already seen. Lisha'er, the verb lisha'er is to estimate. It's one of the words that we have in Hebrew to estimate, but when you want to say an estimated time, for example, if I was going to call someone out when they say ani baderech, okay? I'm expected to meet someone or they're coming over and I want to know when they're coming and they say ani baderech. Okay, and I can say be'ezo sha'a meshu'eret, at what approximate time? Estimated or approximate. Approximate is another way to use that. Okay, so estimate or approximate time of coming. Masha'a meshu'eret, what's the approximate time? And then, in typical Israeli sense, I would say I would start off the reply as and then answer. Okay, and then I can even give a range of time within that. But it's not an exact time like ETA. There's a more fungible time around it. It's a great question. Do they still say ani kvar ba, like bederech? Absolutely. You can say ani kvar ba. That's a great expression. It's equally as obnoxious as ani baderech, and I use also it all the time, so I'm calling myself obnoxious for sure. Ani kvar ba. Ani kvar ba for a man, for male. Ani kvar ba for a female. I'm already on the way. Right? This one, you want to be a little bit more honest, right? If you're still at home getting ready, and you say ani kvar ba, it's the same thing as ani baderech. You're just being a little bit dishonest there, but they won't know, right? Because ani kvar ba, ani baderech. I'm somewhere between me and you. Where that is, I don't necessarily need to specify. What is the feminine of balaganist? Balaganistit. Balaganist, balaganistit. Balaganistim, balaganistiot. Okay, balaganist, balaganistit would be the feminine. What is the adjective form of lazy? I am not lazy. I believe it's atzil. Atzil, atzila, atzilim, atzilot. But you can also say I'm not a lazy person. Ani lo atzlan. Ani lo atzlanit. It's the same meaning. Ani omed la'achin or ani holech la'achin. Are these similar ways of saying I'm about to? Absolutely. Omed le is slang full out. If you want to just say, I am going to do something, just like in English, I am going to, ani holech le, or ani holechet le, I'm going to do something. Same thing. Is Ba'atzal time used as a labor action in Israel, as in we are still showing up for work? No, we don't use Ba'atzal time when it's a labor dispute. We use other words like Be'itzumim. And we haven't had that for a long time, so there's a reason why we haven't taught it, but we have taught it in previous classes. Ba'atzal time is not the same thing as a labor dispute, as a go slow. Ba'atzal time is lazily doing something. How do we say the trains are on time? Harakevet, or the one train, bazman. Bizman or bazman is on time. Just regular translation. Do you have to use the word? Do you have to use the word amud to be on time? No, folks. Again, I think I'm confusing you, or you didn't quite understand. La amod bizmanim is slang. Okay, it comes from the military, and you can use it, and everyone in Israel will understand, because vast majority of Israelis have formed some sort of national or military service. La'amod bizmanim is to be on time in military slang. You can say liot bazman, simply to be on time. Okay, I'm giving you another way to say it. I'm not negating one over the other. Okay, I'm trying to read people's transliteration. Bear with me. I have a lot of questions using transliterated Hebrew and English, and there is nothing standardized, so bear with me as I'm trying to get through some of these. How do you say doing two things at once? How do you say focus? Okay, so to do two things at once is either you can say bevat echad, or you can say bemakbil. Bevat echad or bemakbil both mean doing something at the same time. Bevat echad means at the same time. Bimakbil is in parallel. Right? Those are two ways to say doing two things at once. What is the meaning of lehit palel? I'm assuming you mean the verb lehit palel as in to pray. And that's spelled like this. Whoever who is asking this, spelled lehit palel. Okay. Not sure. Hope that answers your question. Isn't it easier to say I need to change an appointment? That might be easier for you. This is not a Hebrew question. This is a you question. You can say I need to change an appointment. I need to cancel an appointment. I need to postpone an appointment. Those are all perfectly acceptable things to say regardless of language. It's up to you what you think is best in terms of communication. At what time of day does the change from daylight saving time to standard time begin in Israel? I believe it's 1 or 2 in the morning as well. I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head, and it won't happen again for several months. So it's one of those things we make a big deal of in the news, and then it just goes away. So that's not something I keep in my immediate head, but you can look that up for sure. Someone is asking me for transliteration of Lehit Palel, even though they're writing me Lehit Palel in transliteration. I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're asking. Please write to us at hebrew@nbn.org.il, both because we're running out of time, and I'm sorry, I just simply don't understand what you're asking there. And I'd like to get to your answer. For everyone else also who I can't get to your question right now, just write to us or put it in the chat, because we're running out of time here. Someone asked, this is a great way to end the class. Someone asks, not a question about today, but what do people say now? Something like only good news, or is it different? We talked about this the other week. What you will typically say to someone at the end of a conversation, and we can do that now, is you can wish someone bisorot tovot. And we talked about this last week or the week before. Bisorot tovot literally means good news or good tidings, and it's in the context of may you only hear good news. And especially nowadays and everything going on, wishing you not just toda rabba that you joined us and lehitraot, see you all soon, but very much bisorot tovot, that we may only have good news moving forward. So toda rabba again. Thank you all so much for joining. You'll receive a recording of this via email if you sign up by Zoom. This will be up on YouTube in the next few days. Always feel free to write to us at hebrew@nbn.org.il. And until next week, litraot and bisorot tovot. Take care.